way for generations.
Dates in the Bible don't quite match the marriage certificate. Uh-oh.
And welcome, Genies. It is America's family history show, Extreme Genes, and ExtremeGenes.com. Fisher here, your radio root sleuth on the program where we shake your family tree and watch the nuts fall out. And this episode is brought to you by BYU TV's Relative Race. It is back on March 10th, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific. It's going to be another great season of Relative Race. Well, we've got guests today, and some really good ones, too. Lou Del Bianco is going to be on. And Lou has an interesting family story because his grandfather was an Italian immigrant and wound up being like the main guy who sculpted the faces on Mount Rushmore. And when Lou and his family learned that at Mount Rushmore there was hardly a mention of their grandfather anywhere, they went to work and dug up all kinds of information about how Borglum, the designer of Mount Rushmore, couldn't have done anything without Lou's grandfather. And you're going to want to hear the whole tale. That's coming up in about 10 minutes. Then later in the show, we're going to talk to a woman from New Hampshire, Kathy Furs, talking about tying your family history and ethnicity traditions to your wedding dress and ceremonies. A lot of people are doing this now, and she's all a part of it. Hey, just a reminder, by the way, if you haven't signed up for our weekly Genie newsletter, we would encourage you to do that. I give you a blog each week. We give you links to past shows and present shows and links to stories that you're going to really connect with as a genealogist. Just sign up at ExtremeGenes.com. Yeah, it's free. Right now, let's head out to Boston and speak to the very deep-voiced David Allen Lambert, who is just enduring one of those difficult times. How you feeling there, bud?
I've had a different voice for the past 3 days.
Yeah, yes. He is the chief genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. Dave, I know you saved enough for us so that we can get our Family Histoire news today. Where would you like to begin?
Well, I think the greatest story, and I know that you have also seen it because it's on Extreme Genes, is the one about the 81-year-old orphan. You know, she was an orphan back in Ireland, in Dublin, back 81 years ago. Didn't have any clue to her family. It's probably the case for many, many orphans that have never reconnected. But would you think that she would reconnect with her mother this year? Yes. Her mother is 103 years old and still able to, well, almost carry on a conversation. They couldn't hear each other on the phone, so they're obviously going to meet. She also has two half-brothers that are now in their 70s, and she did this with the help of a genealogist and a DNA test.
Of course. And, you know, you think about that, 103-year-old, her problem isn't her mind, her problem is her hearing. And since this 81-year-old also has hearing issues, they got to get together, and they're working on it right now. So that's going to be a really exciting time and a great news story when it happens.
And, you know, a similar one happened. Two sisters recently. One had investigated their DNA and found out, well, they had a half-brother, and this half-brother looks just like Dad, but it's not a brother they ever knew, so obviously Dad had a secret. Well, the other sister, well, she had a DNA test done too, and it turns out they have different dads, but the same mom. Mom had a secret.
Mom had a secret. So Dad had a secret discovered from the sister testing first, and then Mom had the secret from the sister testing second. And I guess it's caused quite a bit of disruption in that family, as you can understand. That story was in the Wall Street Journal. And, you know, you think about all these different tests, and I always maintain when these results come out, every story has their own nuance. They're not all the same. They're not all that similar because everybody's story is different. And boy, this one certainly fits that bill.
It really does make me harken back to wanting to read Bill Griffith's A Stranger in My Genes book. It's the truth. So many families find these very interesting things when they have a DNA test. I have a story about a different kind of family tree. Not the type you have on your wall or look on your computer program to see or online. This one happens to be a Japanese story. In Kawaguchi, Japan, near Tokyo, there is a fifth-generation bonsai tree store. In there was a robbery recently, and unfortunately, 7 trees were stolen, including one particular one that's 33 inches tall that happens to be over 400 years old.
Oh.
And these trees are like family to the owners and have had them for many generations. And their request is, please return our children back to us. And if you are going to keep it, basically, please make sure you water it. I guess they're very fragile. Even though they've lived so long, a week without water can kill them. Paul G. Allen, we've talked about last year, and of course, this gentleman's efforts to find lost World War II ships, including the USS Indianapolis, it really is heroic. You're putting closure for many final chapters in the lives of sailors, some of them well into their 90s, that lost crew members and dear friends during World War II. They've now located the USS Hornet.
You know, that name may not be something that a lot of people today recognize, but the Hornet was the ship that carried Doolittle's raiders across to Tokyo in 1942 and really shifted the war in the Pacific. And so this is an iconic carrier from World War II. Amazing.
It is. And 111 out of the 2,200 sailors on board did not return after it sank on October 26, 1942. So this is the first time it's been seen by Americans since then.
Wow.
It's a pretty amazing story. Well, this week's Blogger Spotlight is shining on Nancy Lowe. Nancy Lowe has a blog called Sassy Jane Genealogy Blog. And this is a family history blog for American and European genealogy. You can find it at sassyjanegenealogy.com/blog. And she blogs a couple of times a month. I'm sure you might want to check it out. If you happen to be in Beantown, swing by American Ancestors, the New England Historic Genealogical Society Library in Boston. Come in as a guest or as a member. And if you're not a member yet, consider using the checkout code EXTREME and save $20 on AmericanAncestors.org.
All right, David. Great stuff. Thanks so much. I hope you feel better. Clear that throat up, okay? Because I know you got talks to do all over the place.
Yeah, heading to Rootstock in other places.
All right, buddy. You take care. We'll see you soon. And coming up next, we're going to talk to a man in Port Chester, New York, whose Italian immigrant grandfather was key to putting together Mount Rushmore. You got to hear their family story tying around that. It's coming up in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Whether you're new to family history, a seasoned pro, or you've simply missed the event in years past, now is your chance to connect at Roots Tech, the world's largest family history conference. Join us for 4 huge days of discovery and make connections to your past. Enjoy world-class entertainment, interactive booths, and hundreds of hands-on classes. Listen to celebrity speakers like Emmy Award-winning actress Patricia Heaton, world-famous ukulele player Jake Shimabukuro, and Sarup Riley, whose story is recounted in the #1 international best-selling autobiography, A Long Way Home. Purchase your 4-day Roots Tech pass today. Passes start at just $99. Learn the latest about DNA, explore recently released record sets, and interact with exciting technology. Join the excitement, join the fun, discover your family, discover yourself, discover Roots Tech. February 27th through March 2nd at the Salt Palace Convention Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Register today at rootstech.org.
Hey, Genies, it is Fisher, and in all of television, you'd be very hard-pressed to find a show that is more made for us than Relative Race. From BYU TV, and coming up on March 10th, another season with host Dan Debenham begins. Now, if you haven't seen the show before, it's 4 teams racing across the country, each night staying with a family member they didn't even know they had. And then each night, one team gets a strike, 3 strikes, you're out, and the last team standing wins $50,000. It's filled with emotion. It's filled with excitement and adventures and a lot of entertainment as well. You can get the app to see it. It's pretty much anywhere you can think of. Android, Google, Apple TV, Windows, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV. I mean, the list goes on. And of course, you can watch it for free on BYU TV or on BYUtv.org. So check it out. It's March 10th, the new season of Relative Race on BYU TV. It starts at 9 o'clock Eastern and 6 o'clock Pacific. Don't miss miss it.
Legacy Tree Genealogist is a proud sponsor of Extreme Genes. Based in Salt Lake City, Utah, near the world's largest family history library, we've worked with genealogists all over the globe since 2004 to track down records, find your ancestors, and the stories that bring your legacy to life. We also analyze DNA test results, help you join lineage societies, and find missing cousins. Legacy Tree is the recommended research partner of MyHeritage.com and is the world's highest client-rated genealogy firm. Call us toll-free at 1-800-818-1476 or register online to get a free estimate. Right now, you can save up to $100 on professional genealogy research. But hurry, this offer expires at the end of the month. Even experienced researchers can benefit from our proven and experienced staff of specialists who can bring new approaches to old problems. Learn from our free genealogy tips on our blog at legacytree.com/blog. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research. You enjoy the discoveries.
Back at it. Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and extremegenes.com. Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And, once in a while, you grasp onto a piece of your family history and you want the world to know about it. You want your people to get the proper credit for what they may have done, or maybe not so much credit for what they shouldn't have done. Nonetheless, we got a guy like that on the line right now. He's Lou Del Bianco, and he's in Port Chester, New York, not too far from my old stomping grounds in Connecticut. And Lou, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Your grandfather was quite the guy, and I guess you got your name from him, yes?
I did. He was in Italy the day I was born, and made a deal with my mom and dad to name me Louis. Originally, it was supposed to be Luigi. He was going to give my parents $1,000, and my mother said, "Give us $500, and we'll call him Louis." And that's the compromise.
Well, it's a little different way of doing things here in the United States than Italy, right?
I was his first grandson, and his namesake, really important to him. And I have such great memories as a little boy, feeling that connection and that bond. When I was in second grade, he had already passed on, and I found a pamphlet about Mount Rushmore. Not knowing what it was, I asked my mom. She told me what my grandfather did, and I was a very shy kid, but this gave me such a confidence that I wanted everybody to know about my grandpa. So I remember going to my class and saying, "I want to tell you about my grandpa."
That's amazing. Now, he was a sculptor at Mount Rushmore, is that right?
He was the chief carver on Mount Rushmore, which meant his job was in the refinement of expression in the four faces, the finishing of the faces. The carving, yes, but the refinement. So when you see the humanity in those four faces and how lifelike they are, that is from the hands of my grandfather.
That's amazing. I was just there last year. I had never been to Mount Rushmore, and wife Julie and I just decided we were going to take a road trip for our vacation last year, and we went there, and it's just astonishing because they also had to work the faces around the way the light would hit them. That in itself is an art. And so he worked with Borglum, obviously, who was the man who was kind of behind what the design was supposed to look like. So your grandfather, Luigi, essentially brought to life what Borglum envisioned.
Yes, there were roughly 400 people who worked on the mountain at different times. A lot of them were unemployed coal miners who lost their jobs during the Depression and were brought on by Borglum, trained by Borglum and my grandfather. But it was somebody of my grandfather's ability that Borglum needed to translate his ideas with that chiaroscuro, that play of light and shadow that you just referenced. And that's a big reason why Borglum picked that mountain, was because of the strong eastern exposure of the sun hitting those faces. And so it was my grandfather that perfected the shafts that were coming out of the pupils where the light would hit it and cast shadows that created different emotions. Yeah, my grandfather had a very close relationship with Borglum. He was basically his right-hand man.
Sure, of course. Did you ever get to speak with him at all about this?
No, I was 6 years old when he passed away, and he never spoke about Rushmore to his own children, my father, my uncle, and my aunt.
Why?
I don't know. I asked my uncle about it, and he said, Papa was very proud. And he said, and I was a young guy, and I wasn't thinking about Rushmore. And that was a regret of my uncle, that he never talked to his father about Rushmore. And he got really interested in the 80s about his dad and wanted to know more about his contribution. And this book, The Carving of Mount Rushmore, came out by Rex Allen Smith. And when it didn't mention my grandfather at all, my uncle was incensed, and he said, this is like talking about the New York Yankees and not mentioning Joe DiMaggio.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
His anger brought me back to my connection to my grandfather, and so we decided that we would go to Washington to research the Borglum papers, because Borglum was the genius and the innovator behind Mount Rushmore. Without him, there would have been no Mount Rushmore.
That's right.
If we could find testimonials from him about my grandfather, we would have some proof about his contribution. And my uncle found just amazing documents where my grandfather is cited by Borglum as being better than any three men he could find in America for this kind of work, and that he was the only intelligent, efficient stone carver who understood the language of the sculptor. This is how much Borglum relied on my grandfather. My grandfather trained a lot of these unemployed miners, and they should be given credit. It was amazing what they were able to do, because they could only go so far. Once you got to a certain point, you needed trained hands to refine these faces, and that's what Luigi was able to do.
That's an incredible story, and it must be amazing for you to actually hold these original documents relating to this incredible national monument put together by Borglum and your grandfather and many others who are unknown as far as history is concerned, and to just hold that and go, wow, this is just a piece of it. You must have felt something at that moment.
I did, and I really feel that my grandfather is a very worthy representative of all of these unknown, these anonymous artisans who worked for great artists and didn't have the ability to put their signature on anything.
I think this is actually common in a lot of different fields. And I look at my own history, and my father was not a composer so much, but he did the orchestrations for the composers. And then I had a great uncle whose boss owned a theater in New York on Broadway, and the idea came to the owner of creating what they called an elevator stage, where you could change basically the sets on the stage by raising it and lowering it, and thereby cutting down time in between scenes. And so this great uncle of mine was the one who actually brought that to life. And so I think it's a very common thing that there's always somebody who doesn't get a lot of credit, but they really were the ones who were the pragmatic ones in the team. So tell us now, there was no recognition of him there at Mount Rushmore. And what did you guys do to get that?
Well, basically, I made a pilgrimage to Mount Rushmore. This was in 1988. I asked them, how is Luigi Del Bianco being acknowledged? He was, in fact, the chief carver. They showed me a plaque of all 400 people who worked on the mountain, from laborers to drillers to secretaries to the guy who put the soul into the faces.
I saw that, yes.
And they basically acknowledged the, quote, workers as a group. And Mount Rushmore has embraced that narrative, that workers under Borglum's tutelage brought these faces to life. And I said to them, this is not the whole story. These men definitely deserve credit for the work that they did, but you need to know that the refinement of the faces was done by my grandfather. And once my uncle and I gathered up these 75 documents with all this irrefutable evidence about how Borglum said there's only really one trained carver on the work, and that's Bianco, we shared the papers with Mount Rushmore, and they just kept saying, your grandfather was a worker, and we only acknowledge the workers on Rushmore as a group. The only person we single out is Gusson Borglum and his son Lincoln. Mm-hmm. And they stuck to that narrative. And what I started to learn, my uncle and I started to learn, was that they didn't think my grandfather wasn't important enough to be given credit. They thought he was too important.
Oh.
He was a threat to their narrative.
Right. Interesting.
He disturbed their narrative. They had literally created a museum just for the, quote, workers as a group. And the Del Bianco family comes along and says, well, you're not telling the whole story. There's a special story here about Borglum's assistant and his true right-hand man, and that's Luigi Del Bianco. So they basically did what most bureaucracies do. They try to exasperate the pursuant, which is myself and my uncle, hoping that we'll get tired of pursuing them and go away. We didn't. We didn't go away. And finally, I was able to get the ear of Cam Shawley, who was the director of all of the national parks for the Midwest region of the country. And he realized that there was something going on here that had to be resolved. He said, there's enough of this. He says, we've got to get to the bottom of this. He offered to send 2 historians to my house, and they went through the papers with a fine-tooth comb and unanimously recommended recognition.
Wow.
And that plaque has finally been unveiled at Mount Rushmore, at the Visitor Center, so that everyone who goes there knows that, yes, a group of untrained miners miraculously helped bring this mountain to life, but they were led by Borglum's assistant, the chief carver, my grandpa.
That is incredible. And for you to go after it for so long and not get frustrated, just say, we're not going away. And so when did the recognition finally come?
Well, before I get into that, no, I had many, many moments of frustration. I gave up many times, I'm not going to lie, but I always went back to it. And every time I went back to it, I went back with fresh ears and fresh eyes. That kind of made the difference. In terms of the actual ceremony, that happened on September 16, 2017. Not that long ago.
No, just a year and a half.
Just about a year and a half. And one of the things that the historians urged me to do was to write a book about it. He said, you need to tell your grandfather's unique story from a genealogical perspective, from the perspective of legacy, an American story. And he said, you've got to use these documents to tell his story, and you've got to detail the ridiculous odyssey that you went on to get him recognized. And so I have a book published called Out of Rushmore's Shadow, the Luigi Del Bianco story, and it's a very personal book about my grandfather's immigrant story, his time at Rushmore and the challenges that he faced, and also the 25 years it took.
What an odyssey that was.
It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Of course, that's fantastic. How many pages?
It's about 358 pages, and it's not a dry academic treatise by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a professional storyteller, so while you're reading it, you'll feel like I'm sitting right next to you saying, I want to tell you about my grandpa. Filled with photos and documents never seen before about the carving of Rushmore. A lot of these are from my grandfather's personal collection. He was a camera freak, so he took a lot of photos.
Wow, so you got stuff in there nobody else has ever seen.
Photos of him carving the eyes of Jefferson, repairing the lip of Jefferson, lots of great stuff.
He's Lou Del Bianco. And Lou, thanks so much for coming on and sharing this story. I think it's really inspiring that you have such a love for your grandfather, who you only knew for a few years, and were able to do this to honor him. And how do you think he'd react to this, by the way?
I'd like to think he'd be proud of me. I felt he was proud of me when I was a little boy. And like I said, the first person I remember hugging me, and this is kind of like my way of hugging him back. LuigiMountRushmore.com. LuigiMountRushmore.com is the website if you want to find out more about the book and the story.
Thanks so much for coming on, Lou. Great talking to you.
Oh, thank you, Scott.
And coming up next, it seems that more and more people at their weddings are trying to add a little family history touch, something from their background, from their cultural background. We're going to talk to a woman who helps make that possible, coming up next on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style of genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history. Scientific studies have proven that youth who know even a little bit about their family history perform better academically and have a greater sense of personal confidence and stability. Genealogy is its own incredible superpower that arms our children with super strength. But how do you get your child or grandchild interested in studying their family history? That kind of stuff is just for grandmas, right? Not anymore. ZapTheGrandmaGap.com leaps the generation gap in a single bound. Author Janet Havorka provides you with useful and timely advice on helping the young people in your life become engaged in their own family history. Janet has an entire collection of books to inspire the young and the young at heart in fun, interactive ways. She also offers creative tips and advice on her blog and in her free weekly newsletter. Stop by ZapTheGrandmaGap.com today to sign up for Janet's free email newsletter with 52 weeks of easy tips, free downloads, and order your set of resource books and workbooks.
And welcome back. It is America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And recently I was out searching for news stories to share with you on ExtremeGenes.com and came across a newspaper up in New Hampshire, a little place called Sentinel Source. And it's from Keene, New Hampshire. And they talked about additional heritage touches to your wedding and how many people now are starting to use their cultural backgrounds, long-standing traditions to add some new aspects to their weddings. And one of the people who's involved in helping people in that area is my next guest. She is Kathy Furs. She's with a place called Country Bridals. Hi, Kathy. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning.
So tell me now, you've done this for some time. When did this really start becoming kind of a regular thing when it comes to weddings?
I think it's been going on off and on, actually, through the years. Young women want to bring something maybe from their mom's gown, where their gowns aren't quite in style, so to say, for today.
Right. Sure.
But yet they'd like to bring something from their gown, their veil, other little touches into their wedding, just to incorporate moms and grandmothers.
Well, I would imagine it would be difficult to actually fit into mom's or grandma's dresses. I mean, everybody's a different size, so I would imagine it's fairly rare to actually wear the original right without any alterations. So what kind of things do they take off of these dresses to incorporate into their own?
I take pieces of lace or trim work.
Okay.
And either add those pieces to the bride's choice of dress or to her veil. I've taken the trim off of the mother's bridal gown, the lace trim, and added it to the base of the long-standing raw-edged veil.
Okay.
So that it just brings a piece of mom into the attire.
Sure, especially when they've passed. I would imagine that's really meaningful for somebody. Do you ever use anything from a male relative who's passed?
Yes, I have.
Huh.
We've had a bride come in with a shirt that was her dad's, and we cut a piece out of the inside of it. It was one of his favorite flannel farming shirts, and we made a heart and put it inside her dress over her heart.
Oh, how beautiful.
And we had another young woman also bring in her brother's shirt, and we did the same thing with that, making a heart, putting it inside the dress.
So this is more of a heritage thing when it comes to those people. What about from foreign countries and other parts of the world? Have you incorporated a lot of things that way?
We worked with a bride who was from Rwanda. She had many different cultural aspects in her entire ceremony. We provided a lot of the American heritage, the white gown, the tuxedos, bridesmaids' dresses. But what they did is they brought many changes. They had 3 or 4 days of ceremony, and each day...
Wow.
Yes.
That's a lot.
It was very interesting.
Yeah, I bet.
Each day had a different type of celebration and different costume, as they called them, that they wore.
Wow.
The bridesmaids and the groomsmen all learned these different cultural dances.
So this sounds like you had like 4 weddings in one there if you're providing all the costumes.
We didn't provide the actual ones that they got from Rwanda. We provided all of the, the white gown and the history.
The Americanized stuff,
The Americanized side, yes.
Sure. What other countries have you dealt with?
We've had a couple of Chinese and Japanese brides, and through, I believe there was one out of the Philippines. We have one right now out of France. But the Asian women bring the red dress and the white dress, so they have, a couple of changes depending on their history.
Well, it sounds like it's quite a fascinating thing when you have to deal with it. Do you find there are any things that you deal with that are kind of sensitive to families' past?
Those don't usually end up coming up unless there's a real issue with it.
Sure.
A lot of those, they really keep more private.
I see. So it wouldn't be anything that would affect your work?
No.
How about the Scottish folks? Do you ever make somebody a kilt?
I have not made somebody a kilt, but we have suggested there's a location in Keene that they can create all the different tartans for different wedding parties.
So you've got assets right around you.
Oh, yes.
So what is the oldest dress that you've ever actually dealt with that maybe you've renovated a little bit and the bride actually wore it as it was with some alterations for her, the oldest one?
I want to say it was probably from the 50s.
60-year-old dress. Nothing from the 19th century.
No. No.
And what's
I've just taken one and removed the sleeves and the collars and turned it into a strapless dress for the young bride.
So it became a multi-generational dress.
Yeah.
Amazing. And what about the oldest thing that you've actually removed from a dress? Have you mentioned all these different pieces from grandma's dress or whatever. How far back do some of those pieces go?
I have to say that's a tough question only because I don't think I've ever asked them other than the fact that, I know that it's their grandmothers or their great-grandmothers.
Yeah.
I've never really thought to ask how old it was.
What do you do when something's a little bit yellowed?
We have a cleaners near us that specializes with restoration of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we may take it to them and have them take a look at it. Other times it's used just that way because possibly the bride has chosen an ivory dress. So even though the lace may have yellowed a little bit, it still kind of blends right in.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So do the guests enjoy weddings more when they have this kind of cultural slant to them, in your experience?
Sure, because that's the couple sharing a little bit more of themselves with their guests.
What about the food? Do you deal with that much, or what have you seen with that as far as some kind of cultural slant with the food?
I haven't dealt a lot in the food because I'm very much in the attire.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard lots of different things in regards to Mexican taco bars. They bring the different cultural foods into their reception. But no, we personally haven't had any opportunity to work with helping anybody decide on their food.
When you mention bringing something, say, from an old bridal gown or the dress that great-grandmother wore, have you ever had anything other than cloth that you've dealt with? Maybe some item or some little badge or pin that somebody had from the past?
Yes, brooches.
Really?
Their grandmother's brooch, and tack it and sew it onto the dress.
What kind of
or
brooches?
Or add it even to their bouquet, attach ribbons to it so that they can carry it in their bridal bouquet.
They just keep it within there, so it's kind of like a secret thing that they carry with them.
That they know that they've got it there.
They know that they have it there, a little piece of grandma or great-grandma or even their parents, right?
Yes.
What was the most unusual item that you've ever dealt with that way?
I have to say my brides have all been really...
Pretty straightforward, huh?
Yeah. Because
Well,
I can't think of anything that struck me as strange to do.
Any buttons
But if they
or anything?
want it, we try to do it.
Yeah, you try to do it. Of course you do. Absolutely.
We've made little pockets inside dresses so that they can put something in them. They tell us how big of a pocket they want, and you just sew the little pocket in, and then they can keep something up underneath their dress.
Boy, there's a lot of secrets going on at these weddings,
yeah.
I'm thinking, Kathy.
Oh, yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
I bought my shop in 2002.
Okay, so you've been at it for a long time here. Is this like a family thing for you?
In a way, yes, it is. I've got my daughter working here and 2 granddaughters.
Oh, how fun. That's fantastic. So you're creating a real heritage business for them.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's exciting. Well, she is Kathy Furs. She's with Country Bridals in Jaffrey, New Hampshire, and she's adding all kinds of cultural and family history touches to brides' dresses, and I assume you help the grooms once in a while, yes?
Oh, yeah, but they are not as in tune to it as the girls are.
The women call the shots, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's no denying that. Hey, thank you so much for your time.
You're
Enjoyed
welcome.
it, and we look forward to seeing some of your work online.
Thank you.
Tom Perry talks preservation next on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. Hey, Genies, it is Fisher, and in all of television, you'd be very hard-pressed to find a show that is more made for us than Relative Race. From BYU TV, and coming up on March 10th, another season with host Dan Debenham begins. Now, if you haven't seen the show before, it's 4 teams racing across the country, each night staying with a family member they didn't even know they had. And then each night, one team gets a strike, 3 strikes, you're out, and the last team standing wins $50,000. It's filled with emotion vacation. It's filled with excitement and adventures and a lot of entertainment as well. You can get the app to see it. It's pretty much anywhere you can think of. Android, Google, Apple TV, Windows, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV. I mean, the list goes on. And of course, you can watch it for free on BYU TV or on BYUtv.org. So check it out. It's March 10th, the new season of Relative Race on BYU TV. It starts at 9 o'clock Eastern and 6 o'clock Pacific. Don't miss it.
Ever wonder where you got your bright green eyes or your infectious laugh? Thanks to technology, discovering your family story has never been easier. And we're bringing it all together at Roots Tech, the world's largest family history conference. Registration for Roots Tech 2019 is open. Join us February 27th through March 2nd for this incredible 4-day event at the Salt Palace Convention Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Learn from over 300 classes on topics such as DNA, capturing family stories, and preserving legacies. For a limited time, take advantage of promotional pricing. Purchase a 4-day pass for only $209 if you register before January 25th. That's $90 off a regularly priced pass. Explore over 200 exhibits in the expo hall and interact with the latest technology. Join the excitement, join the fun. Discover your family, discover yourself. Discover Roots Tech, February 27th through March 2nd at the Salt Palace Convention Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Register today at rootstech.org.
Hey, Genies, Fisher here with a shout out to our Patrons Club members at patreon.com/Extreme Genes. This is where friends of the show support Extreme Genes for as little as $1 a month, all the way up to the cost of a very nice burger each month. I mean, a really juicy one. You can support the show and enjoy various special Patrons Club member benefits, such as acknowledgement on extremegenes.com, special bonus podcasts from expert guests like Maureen Taylor, the photo detective, CeCe Moore, your genetic genealogist, great storytellers and experts on record sets from all over the world. We even offer expert advice on specific questions challenging your research. So go to patreon.com/extremegenes and get signed up. We love sharing your genealogical journey with you on our Extreme Genes Patrons Club. After all, what would you rather have? Inspiring and informative content or another greasy burger? The choice is yours. And thanks for supporting Extreme Genes. All right, back at it. It's Extreme Genes, America's family history show, and extremegenes.com. Fisher here, your radio root sleuth with Tom Perry from tmcplace.com. He is our preservation authority. And Tom, this is the kind of year where the weather is beginning to change, and it's going to get hot in the attic after having been really cold in the attic. And if you've got stuff in the attic, this can be very bad. What can people do?
Oh, absolutely. What you want to do is be able to take your stuff that's stored bad and store it better. So if you can't get to it all right now, at least you're going to be able to put it in a better situation. When you have the resources and time to do it, you'll have a better product to be able to transfer.
Boy, that's true. I mean, you could do scans of family Bible pages or old photographs or whatever, but if you don't have the time right now, or maybe even not the money to have it taken care of, especially in the case of, say, video transfers, this is really important that you get everything stabilized.
In fact, you might have inherited a lot of things, like maybe your mother and father passed away, or an uncle, and somebody's given you the stuff because you're the historian in the family. You need to be able to stabilize these so when you get around to it, they're in a better situation.
And you got to think of bugs too, right? There are bugs, sometimes there are mice. I mean, this is kind of gross stuff to talk about, but that's the reality of what your treasures might be in if they're up in an attic or even in the wrong closet.
You can have rats, you can have roaches, you can have all kinds of things that just love to munch on paper, and there's nothing worse than having this beautiful photo and a rat has decided to use it as his bathroom, and that's going to cause all kinds of problems later on.
So, Tom, I'm thinking then you're right. I mean, there could be all this vermin up there. Does it make sense to wear some kind of face mask and gloves when you're handling these things?
Absolutely. I would always use cotton gloves, and I would always use a mask you can pick up at the local hardware store, which they use for painting. There's just a paper mask or even a hospital-type mask if you have some of those handy, because you don't want to be breathing this in at all, and you don't want to be exhaling humidity onto your products either.
Okay, so where do we start?
The first thing you want to do is get it out of a bad situation. If you have it in a place that's fluctuating from hot to cold, whether it's an attic, whether it's a closet where you have a heating duct that's right above it, anything that's going to be the closer to that heating duct is going to take the brunt of the punishment. So you need to get it away from that. You need to be able to store it better. So what I want to do is get it out of that bad environment and then set up some boxes. And you have box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on how bad your stuff is. And then you can go through and put them in those. For example, you have this big box, separate all your photos, your slides, your negatives, home movie films, 8mm, 60mm. First, separate all those. So then you can go to something like the box that has your books, your family Bibles, special papers. You want to take these things and put them in a box where they're going to be a little bit cleaner, like get a squirrel tail brush or get some air. And make sure if you use air, I recommend a compressor. Don't get that canned air, because if you shake it, it becomes humid and it can cause all kinds of problems with turning into mud and stuff from your dust.
Oh, I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's true.
You can get a compressor pretty inexpensively at like a hardware store, and just make sure it has different adjustments so you can make it blow soft, you can make it blow a little bit harder, because you don't want to blow a hole through this Bible because the pages have got kind of brittle in time. If they don't have that available, get like a nylon stocking and put around the end and tie it with some string, and then that will kind of reduce it too. Or kind of hold it on an angle, like you can ricochet it from a board onto the page to get rid of the dust.
Wow.
Then you can move it into a stage 2 box.
And what is that?
Okay, that's a little bit cleaner. Like when you're doing your wash, for instance, it goes through and puts all your water in. Then it goes through and puts your detergent in. Then it does the next step, you're softening, and then you dry it. You want to do the same thing with your special things. Take them and clean them for one step, put them in the next box, put them in the next box. So you want to kind of go through steps depending how bad it is. So basically, you want to take these things and put them in a group. Like if you've had rat droppings, those are going to be really, really bad. And then in the next segment, let's talk about the next step.
Okay. There has to be another one after that. Thanks, Tom. We'll be back at it in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style of genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history.
When was the last time you heard your grandmother's voice or saw your family enjoying life back in the 1950s or 60s? If the reason is you haven't known what to do with your old recordings, videos, and films, here's your answer. The Multimedia Center in Salt Lake City.
We brought in a video project to the Multimedia Center, and overnight they duplicated it to DVD so we could meet our deadline.
The Multimedia Center, 2870 East, 3300 South, Salt Lake City. Open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. Call 801-483-1717 or go to transferduplication.com.
Genies, it's Fisher with exciting news. The Weekly Genie, the official newsletter of Extreme Genes, is here. It's your Monday morning briefing on what's happening in the world of genealogy and family history and on Extreme Genes. Get all the details of jaw-dropping stories of discovery and keep up with the latest techniques in family history research. Get to know more about your favorite Extreme Genes personalities, and it's free. Sign up for the Weekly Genie now at extremegenes.com or the Extreme Genes Facebook page. And when you do, you'll receive David Allen Lambert's top 10 tips for beginning genealogists from the chief genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society. Sign up today for the Weekly Genie. All right, we're back for our final segment this week of Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show on ExtremeGenes.com. Fisher here, your Radio Root Sleuth, and it's Tom Perry on the line from TMCPlace.com, our preservation authority, and we've been having a very disgusting conversation about rats and bugs and all this stuff getting into your documents and into your old photographs that might be stored in the attic and cleaning them in one box and moving them to the other. So I think we got up to box 2 at the end of the last segment, Tom. And what do you do in box 2?
Okay, box 2, you basically separated all your photos and documents that have like rat droppings and urine. You want to keep those in that box. Then as you get to the next box, they're going to be a little bit cleaner. Then the next box. And you might go through a big stack that's maybe a foot tall or a great big storage box. And in the middle, everything looks pristine and fine because it's kind of been insulated from the humidity changes, the temperature changes. Then those go in the last box. And then remember, once you put them in boxes, if you can't get to them immediately to start your transfers, you want to make sure you put them in a big plastic bag, like some giant Ziploc bags. If you have one of those food sealers, use something like that. Because if you've gone through all these steps, you don't want to go through them in 2 or 3 years down the road when, hey, I now have time to preserve this stuff, and it's just gone bad because you didn't take the next step. So make sure you seal them. And one thing that works really, really well is to get an upright freezer. You can find used ones on the internet. You might be able to find them in your local paper. They're not that expensive if you go to your local appliance store. If they're damaged and they have marks on them, that's great. And these things do several things. They keep all the different varmints out. They keep the temperature a lot more stable inside. And if you have items that have really been damaged from water, you can put them in there and actually freeze them to stop it from going any farther. It's kind of a stopgap thing. You want to do this if there's no other way to get around it. But if you can have one of these in your basement, the humidity and everything inside is going to stay consistent, so you don't have to worry so much about the temperature changes. But also, like I say, if you can't get a new one, you have to get an old one that doesn't even work. At least it's going to work for you, keeping the varmints out and the dust out. So it will be ready for you when you can take the time to restore it properly.
So, Tom, what happens now if I've come to you and I said, all right, I've cleaned these the best I can, and I want you now to do some scanning or digitizing in the case of film or videos or something like this. How do you deal with things that aren't 100% clean?
It depends on the product. We get a lot of things out of Florida and places in the deep south where they have mold. And we get videotapes so you can actually see the white mold on them. And those are really, really bad. And those are one of the things you want to freeze and stop this deterioration as best you can. Then what we do is we find an old used VCR and run them through these and then tie it into our system to burn you a new DVD. And then when we're done with your group, we throw it away because we don't want to put mold on somebody else's things.
Wow.
So be very careful.
So you go out and actually buy one of these things?
Oh, yeah. We go to like Goodwill and find an old VCR if we can and run them through those, or the people have them. But be careful at home. If you want to view your tapes before you send them to us, if they have mold on them, make sure you view your moldy ones last, because otherwise you're going to spread the mold to the other ones and then it'll just grow and develop more. And so then throw it away when you're done with it. Or if you're going to send us your tapes, send us your VCR too, because then we can run them on your machine. And when we're all done, clean the heads, do whatever we need to between the different transfers. Then when we're completed, throw it away and just send you your DVDs back.
Unbelievable. All right, a lot to think about there, Tom. Thanks so much, and you have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon.
My pleasure.
Hey, we have covered it all this week, right? From Mount Rushmore to mold. I mean, how many shows can say that? If you missed any of it, make sure you catch the podcast. It's easy to find. It's on iHeartRadio. It's on TuneIn Radio, iTunes, ExtremeGenes.com. It's all over the place. And please tell your friends about it as well. And if you haven't done so yet, sign up for our weekly Genie newsletter. We give you a blog each week, links to past shows, links to current shows, and to stories that you as a genealogist will especially appreciate. Thanks for joining us. We will talk to you again next week. And remember, as far as everyone knows, we're a nice, normal family.